My mom charged me rent, then gave my room to my sister and her kids without asking. She called me selfish for complaining. I moved out quietly, took everything I paid for, and let the house collapse when my money left. I never thought I'd be writing this, but here we are. 26 years old and finally understanding what it means to be the family ATM. My name doesn't matter for this story, but what does matter is how thoroughly I was used by the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. Growing up, Brittany was always the golden child. 3 years older than me, she had this way of commanding attention that I never quite managed. Mom would light up whenever Brittany walked into a room, like someone had flipped a switch. Dad tried to balance things out, but he worked long hours at the factory and wasn't around enough to notice how lopsided everything had become. Brittany got pregnant at 19. Mom threw her a baby shower that cost more than my entire senior year of high school expenses combined. When she got pregnant again 2 years later with a different guy, Mom acted like it was just another blessed event. Meanwhile, I was working 2 part-time jobs while finishing community college because there was never any money left for my tuition. The rent situation started when I was 22. I just landed a decent job as a junior accountant at a mid-sized firm downtown. The pay wasn't amazing, but it was steady and had benefits. I'd been living at home to save money for my own place, contributing here and there for groceries and utilities. One evening, Mom sat me down at the kitchen table with a serious expression. "You're making good money now," she said, sliding a piece of paper across the table. "It's time you started paying rent like an adult." The number she'd written down was $850 a month. For context, I could have rented a decent 1-bedroom apartment in our area for $900. When I pointed this out, she got defensive. "You get meals included, utilities, laundry, everything," Mom argued. "You won't find that kind of deal anywhere else. Plus, you're family. This is just teaching you responsibility." I was too tired to argue. The job was new and demanding, and I figured I'd pay rent for 6 months while I built up my savings, then move out. That was 4 years ago. Here's what nobody tells you about paying rent to your parents: the rules are different. I paid $850 every single month, never late, never short. But Mom still treated me like I was 16. She'd walk into my room without knocking. She'd comment on what time I came home. She'd guilt-trip me if I didn't join them for dinner because I had plans with friends. "I don't know why you're being so antisocial," she'd say. "We're your family." Brittany, meanwhile, had moved out with her boyfriend Tyler and their 2 kids, Mackenzie and Jackson. Tyler worked construction when he felt like it, which wasn't often. They lived in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment on the other side of town, constantly behind on rent and asking Mom for money. I should mention that by this point, I was paying for more than just my room. The internet bill was in my name because Mom's credit was shot. I'd upgraded the service so I could work from home occasionally, and I covered the $120 monthly cost. The streaming services everyone used? My accounts. The new washer and dryer in the basement? I'd split that cost with Dad when the old ones died. The kitchen renovation that Mom had been desperate for? I contributed $3,000 toward the $8,000 total cost. But I was still just a tenant who needed to learn responsibility. Everything changed on a Tuesday in March. I came home from work around 6:30, exhausted from a particularly brutal audit. The house was full of noise, which was unusual. Mom and Dad were usually quiet in the evenings, watching their shows or reading. I walked into chaos. Mackenzie and Jackson were running through the living room, screaming at a volume that should have required a permit. Brittany was on the couch, scrolling through her phone. Tyler was nowhere to be seen. Mom was in the kitchen, cooking enough food to feed a small army. "What's going on?" I asked, setting down my work bag. Mom turned with a bright smile. "Surprise. Brittany and the kids are moving in for a while. Isn't that wonderful?" My stomach dropped. "What do you mean, for a while?" "They're having some financial trouble," Mom explained, lowering her voice as if that made it better. "Tyler lost his job, and they got evicted. Family helps family, sweetheart. You understand?" I understood perfectly. I understood that once again, Brittany's problems were about to become everyone's problems. "Where are they staying?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. "Well, the guest room isn't set up for kids," Mom said, not meeting my eyes. So we moved Brittany and the kids into your room. It's the biggest bedroom, and they need the space. You can take the guest room. I felt like I'd been slapped. You moved them into my room? Without asking me? Don't be dramatic, Mom said, waving her hand dismissively. We didn't throw away any of your stuff. We just moved it to the guest room. You're at work all day anyway. What does it matter which room you sleep in? I pay rent, Mom. I pay $850 a month for that room. Her expression hardened. And now you'll pay $850 for the guest room. What's the difference? You still have a roof over your head. The difference is that you gave away something I was paying for without even telling me. Brittany appeared in the kitchen doorway, holding Jackson on her hip. Can you not yell? You're scaring the kids. I stared at her. You knew about this? Mom offered, Brittany said defensively. What was I supposed to do? We were about to be homeless. Unlike you, I have children to think about. Unlike me, you made choices that led to this situation, I shot back. And I'm not subsidizing those choices by giving up what I pay for. You're being incredibly selfish right now, Mom said sharply. Your sister needs help. Your niece and nephew need stability. All we're asking is that you be flexible for a few months until they get back on their feet. A few months. That phrase does a lot of heavy lifting in conversations like these. A few months can easily become a year. A year can become indefinite. I went to the guest room to assess the damage. They'd shoved my furniture in wherever it fit, which wasn't well. My desk was wedged against the window, blocking most of the natural light. My dresser was crooked because the room wasn't quite wide enough. They'd piled my clothes on the bed, and my books were stacked in boxes in the corner. The room was half the size of my actual bedroom, with no closet, just a small wardrobe that couldn't hold a quarter of my clothes. I opened my bedroom door across the hall. Brittany had already made herself at home. Her clothes were in my closet. The kids' toys were scattered across my floor. They'd moved in a second twin bed for Jackson, and Mackenzie would apparently share the queen bed with Brittany. My bedding was gone, replaced with Brittany's floral comforter set. The disrespect was staggering. That night, I barely slept on the guest room bed, which was really just a cheap futon with a bar that dug into my back. I could hear everything through the thin walls, Mackenzie crying about missing her old room, Jackson singing loudly at 9 p.m., Brittany talking on the phone to Tyler, who was apparently staying with a friend because there wasn't enough room for him at Mom and Dad's house. By morning, I'd made my decision. I started looking for apartments during my lunch breaks. I was careful not to tell anyone what I was doing. I'd learned over the years that information was currency in my family, and anything I shared would immediately get back to Mom. Finding a place took 3 weeks. I settled on a one-bedroom apartment in a decent neighborhood, about 20 minutes from work. The rent was $950, just $100 more than I was currently paying, and I'd actually have privacy and space. I signed the lease and set my move-in date for the first Saturday in April. During those 3 weeks, living at home became unbearable. Mackenzie and Jackson had no concept of quiet hours. They'd be up at 6 a.m. on weekends, running through the house and screaming. Brittany made no effort to control them. Kids are just loud, she'd say with a shrug. You'll understand when you have your own. The bathroom situation was a nightmare. We only had 2 full bathrooms, and now there were 6 people competing for shower time and counter space. My toiletries kept getting used and not replaced. Mackenzie got into my makeup and destroyed a $40 foundation palette. She's just playing, Brittany said when I complained. It's not that serious. Just buy more. The kitchen wasn't any better. I'd come home from work to find the leftovers I'd saved for dinner gone. Brittany would give me this innocent look and say, "The kids were hungry. I didn't think you'd mind sharing." Sharing would have involved asking first. I started buying a mini fridge for the guest room and keeping my food in there. Mom saw it and actually had the nerve to call me selfish. "We're a family," she said. "We share things. What's yours is everyone's. Except what's mine is the only thing being shared," I pointed out. "Nobody's using Brittany's stuff without permission." "That's because Brittany doesn't have much," Mom replied. "You have more, so you should give more. That's how family works." That conversation crystallized something for me. In Mom's mind, I existed to subsidize Brittany's life. My success wasn't something to be proud of, it was a resource to be exploited. The final straw came 2 days before my scheduled move. I got home from work to find that someone had gone through my room. Again. My desk drawers were open, and my work laptop was sitting out instead of in the locked cabinet where I always kept it. I found Brittany in the kitchen. "Did you go through my desk?" "I needed to print something for Mackenzie's school," she said casually. "Your printer still works, right?" "You went into my work laptop?" "Relax, I didn't look at your files or anything. I just printed one page." I was stunned by her audacity. "That's a company laptop, Brittany. I could get fired if there's any kind of security breach." "Oh my God, you're so dramatic. I printed a permission slip, not state secrets." I wanted to scream. Instead, I went to my room and started packing what I could fit into my car without anyone noticing. I took my important documents, my jewelry, my expensive clothes, and my laptop. Everything else would have to wait until moving day. That night at dinner, Mom announced that she needed everyone to chip in more for groceries since there were extra people in the house now. She looked directly at me. "You're making good money," Mom said. "An extra $200 a month shouldn't be a problem." I put down my fork. "Let me get this straight. I'm paying $850 for a room half the size of the one I was originally renting. I have no privacy, my stuff keeps getting used without permission, and now you want me to pay more for groceries that I barely have time to eat because I'm never here? Don't make it sound so transactional," Dad said quietly. He'd been silent through most of these conflicts, and his sudden participation surprised me. "Your sister needs help." "My sister needs to figure out her own life," I said. "I'm not responsible for her choices." "Family takes care of each other," Mom said firmly. "You keep saying that, but it only seems to apply to me taking care of everyone else. When have any of you taken care of me?" The table went silent. Brittany was staring at her plate. Mom's face had turned red. Dad looked uncomfortable. "We gave you a home," Mom said finally, her voice cold. "We raised you, fed you, clothed you. Everything we did was taking care of you." "That's called being a parent," I replied. "That's not something I'm supposed to spend the rest of my life repaying." I excused myself from the table and went to my cramped guest room. I could hear them talking about me in low voices, but I didn't care anymore. I was done. Moving day arrived. I'd taken the day off work, telling them I had a dentist appointment. I'd rented a U-Haul, and my coworker James had agreed to help me load it. I told him the basics of my situation, and he'd been horrified. "Your own mother gave away your room?" he'd said. "That's insane." We started loading at 8 a.m. I timed it perfectly. Mom had taken Mackenzie to a doctor's appointment, and Brittany had gone with them. Dad was at work. I had the house to myself. I took everything. My furniture, my kitchen supplies, my towels, my dishes. The TV in the living room? I bought it 2 years ago when the old one died. It went into the truck. The coffee maker everyone used? Mine. The good knife set? Mine. The decent cookware that had replaced Mom's ancient scratched-up pans? All mine. I unplugged the router and modem I'd been paying for. I took the streaming devices connected to every TV. I even took the batteries out of the remote controls, which was petty but deeply satisfying. The washer and dryer were trickier. I'd paid for half, but moving them would have been obvious. Instead, I called the appliance store and asked about their lease-to-own program. Turns out, if someone stops making payments on that kind of arrangement, the store can repossess the items. I made one final payment and then canceled the automatic payments from my account. Mom had never set up her share, she'd been relying on me to handle it. The store would be in touch with her soon enough. I left the guest room furniture because it wasn't mine, but I took every single item I'd ever purchased. When James and I finished loading the truck, the house looked noticeably different. Not empty, but definitely less comfortable. I left an envelope on the kitchen counter with a note inside, "I've moved out. Here's written notice that I will not be paying rent for April. All items I purchased have been removed. The router and modem will be disconnected at the end of the billing cycle since the account is in my name. Best of luck." I didn't leave a forwarding address. James helped me unload at my new apartment, and by evening I was exhausted but surrounded by my own things in my own space. I ordered pizza, cracked open a beer, and savored the absolute silence. No kids screaming. No sister guilt-tripping. No mother making snide comments about my life choices. My phone started ringing around 7 p.m. Mom, Brittany, Dad, even Tyler somehow. I let every call go to voicemail. The texts started coming through. Mom, where are you? What happened to the house? Brittany, did you seriously take everything? How are we supposed to function? Dad, we need to talk. Call me. Mom again, this is unbelievable. After everything we've done for you. I didn't respond to any of them. I took a long, hot shower in my own bathroom with no one banging on the door. I made tea in my own kitchen. I sat on my own couch and watched my own TV. The voicemails got progressively more desperate and then angry. Mom's first message was confused. Honey, where are you? There's a note saying you moved out, but that can't be right. Call me back. By the third voicemail, her tone had shifted. I don't know what kind of tantrum this is, but you need to bring back our things. That TV was for the family. The coffee maker, the dishes, all of it. You can't just steal from us. Brittany's voicemails were more direct. You're such a selfish bitch. We have kids here. Kids. And you took everything. What kind of aunt is that? I saved all of them, just in case. Sunday afternoon, I finally sent a group text to my parents and Brittany. I paid for everything I took. I have receipts. The TV, the kitchen items, the router, all purchased by me over the past 4 years. If you believe I took something that belongs to you, feel free to provide proof of purchase and I'll return it. Otherwise, stop contacting me. Mom called immediately. I answered this time. How dare you abandon your family like this, she said before I could even say hello. Do you have any idea the position you've put us in? The position I've put you in? I laughed, and it wasn't a nice sound. You gave away the room I was paying for. You treated me like a walking ATM. You made it clear that my only value was what I could provide financially. That's not true. We love you. Love isn't making your child pay rent and then giving away what they're paying for. Love isn't using their things without permission and expecting them to be grateful for the opportunity to be exploited. Exploited? We gave you a home. I paid for that home. I paid $850 a month for 4 years. That's over $40,000, Mom. Plus the internet, the streaming services, the appliances, the kitchen renovation. I could have been living in my own place this entire time, building equity, creating my own life. Instead, I was subsidizing yours while being treated like a burden. She went quiet for a moment. Your sister needs help. She has children. And that's not my responsibility. I didn't make the choices that led to her situation. I'm not required to sacrifice my own financial stability and mental health because she keeps making bad decisions. So you're just going to let us struggle? You won't struggle, I said. You'll adjust. You'll figure it out like everyone else does. Brittany can get a job. Tyler can get a job. You and Dad can set boundaries about how long they can stay. But none of that is my problem anymore. If you don't come back and help us, you're not welcome in this family, Mom said, and her voice had gone cold. That hurt more than I expected, but it also clarified everything. Then I guess I'm not part of this family anymore. I hung up. The next few days were quiet. I focused on making my apartment feel like home, unpacking boxes and arranging furniture. Work was a welcome distraction. I threw myself into a new project, staying late at the office, grateful to have something concrete to focus on. Wednesday evening, Dad showed up at my apartment. I don't know how he found my address. I certainly hadn't given it to him. He knocked on the door holding a bag from my favorite Thai restaurant, a peace offering. Can we talk? He asked. I let him in, though I wasn't sure why. We sat at my small dining table, and for a while, we just ate in silence. Your mother is beside herself, Dad finally said. Good. He looked surprised by my bluntness. She didn't mean for things to get this far out of hand. Didn't she? Because from where I'm sitting, she made a series of very deliberate choices that all prioritized Brittany over me. Dad sighed heavily. He looked older than I remembered, tired in a way that went beyond physical exhaustion. Your sister has always needed more help. She's not as capable as you are. And whose fault is that? You and Mom spent my entire childhood making excuses for her, cleaning up her messes, protecting her from consequences. You created a person who believes the world owes her something. Meanwhile, I learned that nothing I did would ever be enough because I wasn't the one who needed saving. That's not fair. Isn't it? Name one time either of you celebrated my accomplishments without somehow turning it back to Brittany's needs. He couldn't. I could see him trying to think of an example, mentally scrolling through years of family history, and coming up empty. You graduated college, he offered weakly. Mom spent my entire graduation dinner talking about how Brittany was struggling financially and asking if I'd seen any entry-level positions at my company that might suit her. She didn't even ask about my job or what I'd be doing. Dad's shoulders slumped. I didn't realize it had gotten this bad. It's been this bad for years. You just didn't notice because it wasn't affecting you directly. What do you want from us? He asked. Nothing, I said honestly. I don't want anything from you anymore. I want to live my life without being guilted into managing everyone else's problems. I want to save my money for my own future instead of pouring it into a household that doesn't appreciate or respect me. I want to come home to peace and quiet instead of chaos and criticism. You're really not coming back? There's nothing to come back to, Dad. The life you're offering isn't one I want anymore. He left shortly after, taking his pad thai with him. I felt sad watching him go, but I didn't feel guilty. That was new. Over the following weeks, the calls and texts continued sporadically. Brittany sent me a long message about how I'd abandoned Mackenzie and Jackson, how they asked about me and didn't understand where I'd gone. I didn't respond. Using children as emotional leverage was a line I wouldn't let her cross. Mom tried a different approach, sending me articles about family estrangement and how damaging it was. Each one came with a little message: I thought you should see this, or this reminded me of us. I deleted them without reading past the headlines. Through the grapevine of extended family, I started hearing about the fallout from my departure. Aunt Linda called to check on me, and during that conversation, I learned that Mom had been complaining to anyone who would listen about my betrayal. She's telling everyone you stole from them, Linda said carefully. That you took the TV and the appliances out of spite. I have receipts for everything, I replied. If she wants to keep lying, I'll be happy to provide documentation. She's also saying Brittany and the kids might have to move into a shelter because they can't afford to stay at the house. That got my attention. Why would they move to a shelter? Apparently your parents can't afford to keep them there without your rent money. Your dad mentioned something about the mortgage being tight. A cold realization washed over me. I'd known my parents weren't great with money, but I hadn't realized how much they'd been relying on my contributions. The rent, the internet, my share of groceries, the various utilities I'd been quietly covering. I did some quick mental math and felt sick. I'd been paying for roughly a third of their household expenses without realizing it. That's not my problem, I told Linda, and I meant it even though it felt harsh. They made the choice to take in Brittany and her kids without considering whether they could afford it. They gave away my room and expected me to just accept it. The financial consequences are theirs to deal with. I know, Linda said gently. I'm on your side here. I just thought you should know what's being said. I appreciate it. And if anyone asks, you can tell them I'm doing great. Because I was. My apartment was peaceful. My bank account was growing instead of draining. I joined a gym near my office and started going 3 times a week. I was sleeping better than I had in years. The constant background stress of managing everyone else's emotions had lifted, and I felt lighter. 2 months after I moved out, I got a call from an unknown number. Usually, I wouldn't answer, but something made me pick up. Is this the daughter of Teresa Montgomery? A woman's voice asked. My blood ran cold. Yes. Who's calling? This is Rebecca from Springfield Community Hospital. Your father was admitted this evening with chest pains. He's stable now, but he asked us to contact you. I grabbed my keys and was out the door before the call even ended. Dad was sitting up in a hospital bed when I arrived, looking pale but alert. Mom was in the chair next to him, her eyes red from crying. She looked up when I walked in, and something complicated crossed her face. You came, she said. Of course I came. He's my father. The doctor explained that it had been a warning sign rather than a full heart attack, likely stress-related. Dad would need to make some lifestyle changes, reduce stress, possibly start medication. He'd be fine with proper care. I stayed for an hour, mostly sitting in silence while Mom fussed over Dad and nurses came in and out to check vitals. Finally, Mom stepped out to call Brittany with an update. "I'm sorry," Dad said as soon as we were alone. "For what?" "For everything. For not seeing how we were treating you. For not standing up for you more. For taking your help for granted." He looked at me with genuine remorse. "Your mother and I have been arguing a lot since you left. About money, about Brittany, about how we raised you girls. The hospital social worker asked about our stress levels, and it all came out." "What came out?" "That we leaned on you too hard. That we expected you to hold everything together while making no equivalent demands on your sister. That we took advantage of your competence and your generosity." He took a shaky breath. "The social worker asked if we've considered family therapy. Are you considering it?" "I don't know if your mother will agree, but I am. Even if it's just for me." He reached for my hand. "I can't undo the past 4 years or the 26 years before that. But I want you to know that I see it now. I see what we did. It wasn't enough to fix everything, but it was something." Mom came back into the room, and the moment broke. She and I made awkward small talk about Dad's care instructions and when he'd be discharged. I left before things could get more uncomfortable, promising to check in the next day. Driving home, I felt the weight of the evening settling on me. Seeing Dad in that hospital bed had scared me more than I wanted to admit. But it hadn't changed the fundamental truth of my situation. I couldn't go back to being the family's financial safety net. That role had nearly broken me. Dad came home 2 days later with strict orders to rest. I visited once, bringing groceries and staying just long enough to make sure he was settled. Brittany was there with the kids, and the house looked worse than I remembered. Cluttered, chaotic, with that specific kind of mess that comes from too many people in too small a space. Brittany barely acknowledged me beyond a curt nod. Mom was polite but distant. The message was clear: I wasn't forgiven for leaving. I was okay with that. Another month passed. I got a promotion at work, a raise that came with more responsibilities but also more financial breathing room. I started looking at houses, thinking about building equity like I should have been doing for years. My apartment was nice, but I wanted something permanent, something truly mine. Late one night, I got a text from Brittany. Just one line: "Tyler and I are getting back together. We're moving out next week." I didn't respond, but I felt a strange sense of closure. The crisis that had been the excuse for all of this was ending. My family would have to figure out their finances without me, and maybe that was for the best. A week later, Dad called. "Can we meet for coffee?" We met at a diner halfway between my apartment and their house. Dad looked better, healthier than he had in the hospital. He'd lost a little weight, and some of the stress lines around his eyes had softened. "Brittany's gone," he said without preamble. "Moved in with Tyler again. Different apartment, same situation probably." I heard. "Your mother and I had a long talk after they left. About our finances, about retirement, about a lot of things we should have discussed years ago." He stirred sugar into his coffee, not meeting my eyes. "We can't afford the house anymore. Without your rent money and with the extra expenses from having Brittany and the kids here, we depleted our savings. We're behind on the mortgage." I felt a pang of something, guilt mixed with vindication. "What are you going to do?" "Sell, probably. Downsize to something more manageable. Your mother's upset about it, but it's the reality we're facing." He finally looked up at me. "She blames you, at least partially. I want you to know that I don't. This was our responsibility to manage, and we failed. I'm not going to offer to help," I said clearly. "Just so we're on the same page." "I know. I'm not asking you to." He smiled sadly. "I'm just telling you because I want you to hear it from me, not from your mother or through the family rumor mill. And because I want you to know that I'm working on it. Being better, seeing things more clearly. I started individual therapy last week." "That's good, Dad. Really good." We talked for another hour about neutral things: my promotion, his health, the unseasonably warm weather. It wasn't healing, but it was civil. It was more than I'd expected a few months ago. I drove home thinking about consequences. How my parents had made financial decisions based on the assumption that I'd always be there to pick up the slack. How Brittany had made life choices assuming someone would always bail her out. How I'd enabled it all by never setting firm boundaries until I'd finally hit my breaking point. The house sold 3 months later. Mom and Dad moved into a 2-bedroom condo across town. It was smaller, more affordable, and forced them to be more intentional about their spending. Mom didn't speak to me throughout the entire moving process. Dad kept me updated via text, short messages letting me know they were okay. I bought my house that same month. 3 bedrooms, a small yard, a mortgage I could comfortably afford on my salary alone. I furnished it slowly, carefully, choosing pieces I loved rather than whatever was cheapest. Every room reflected my taste, my choices, my life. Brittany reached out 6 months after that, a long rambling message about how she and Tyler were engaged, how they were really trying this time, how she wanted to rebuild our relationship. I read it twice and then archived it without responding. Maybe that made me cold, but I was protecting the peace I'd worked so hard to build. Christmas came, and for the first time in my life, I didn't spend it with my family. I'd been invited to a coworker's holiday party, and I went. I drank good wine, laughed at terrible jokes, and felt grateful for the chosen family I was building. Mom sent a card. Just a generic holiday greeting with her and Dad's name signed at the bottom. No personal message, no invitation to visit. I put it in a drawer and didn't send one back. Looking back now, a year and a half after I moved out, I don't regret my decision. Sometimes people ask if I miss my family, and the honest answer is complicated. I miss the idea of them, the fantasy of what a supportive family might look like. But I don't miss the reality of what my family actually was, a system designed to extract resources from me while giving nothing meaningful in return. I think about the $40,800 I paid in rent alone, not counting everything else I contributed. I think about what I could have done with that money, traveled, invested, bought a house sooner. I think about the emotional energy I spent trying to make everyone else happy while neglecting my own needs. The house I bought myself? That feels like a reclaiming. Every mortgage payment is going towards something that's mine, building a future I chose. Nobody can give away my bedroom or use my things without permission. Nobody can call me selfish for having boundaries. Dad and I text occasionally, surface-level check-ins. He sends photos of the condo sometimes, updates about his health. Mom and I haven't spoken since before the house sold. Brittany's engagement fell apart, apparently, and she moved back in with Mom and Dad for a few weeks before finding another boyfriend with an apartment. The cycle continues, just without me in it. Some of my extended family thinks I'm cold, that I abandoned my parents when they needed me. Aunt Linda defends me when she can, but mostly she tells me to let it go, that family gossip isn't worth my energy. She's right. I've started dating someone, a guy I met through a hiking group. He comes from a big, messy, loving family where people actually show up for each other, not just financially but emotionally. Watching his family interact has been eye-opening, seeing what healthy relationships actually look like. He asked me once why I don't talk to my family, and I gave him the abbreviated version. He was quiet for a long time afterward. "You know that's not normal, right?" He finally said. "Charging your kid rent and then giving away their room? Using their money and treating them like an ATM? That's not what family does." "I know that now." "Good," he said, pulling me close. "Because you deserve better than that." I'm learning to believe him. My life now is smaller in some ways, quieter. But it's mine in a way it never was before. I make decisions based on what I want, not what everyone else needs from me. I spend my money on things that matter to me. I sleep in my own bed in my own house with doors that lock and boundaries that hold. Is it lonely sometimes? Sure. There are moments when I wish I had a family I could call for advice or support. But then I remember what that support actually looked like: conditional, transactional, available only when I was being useful. I'll take lonely over exploited any day. The last communication I had with Mom was 3 months ago. A text message, late at night: "I hope you're happy, living alone with no family. You'll regret this someday." I deleted it. I'm not living without family, I'm living without people who treated me like a bank account with a pulse. There's a difference, and I'm finally starting to understand it. My house is quiet tonight. Tomorrow I'm having friends over for dinner, people who chose to be in my life and who I chose back. Next month I'm taking a vacation to somewhere I've always wanted to visit, paid for with money I saved instead of giving away. The life I'm building isn't perfect, but it's honest. Nobody's using me or taking advantage of my generosity. Nobody's calling me selfish for having needs and boundaries. Nobody's giving away what I've worked for without my consent. I'm 28 now, finally living the life I should have been building at 22. Better late than never, I suppose. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd stayed, if I'd kept paying rent and accepting the scraps of respect my family offered. I'd probably still be in that guest room, funding everyone else's choices, wondering why I felt so empty despite doing everything right. Instead, I'm here. In my house, with my things, living my life on my terms. And if that makes me selfish in my family's eyes, then I'll wear that label proudly. Because the alternative, sacrificing myself on the altar of everyone else's dysfunction, nearly destroyed me. I'm done apologizing for choosing myself. I'm done explaining why I deserve basic respect and consideration. I'm done performing gratitude for the privilege of being exploited. The house collapsed when my money left, just like I knew it would. But I'm not responsible for rebuilding what was never stable in the first place. That's their work to do, not mine. I'm building something better, something that's actually mine. And for the first time in my adult life, I'm okay with that being enough.